I just bet $1 billion that I could make any woman fall in love with me in 30 days. The woman I chose? My ex-maid. Thaddeus Ravencrest adjusted his diamond-encrusted Rolex as he stepped out of his Bugatti 110 onto the red carpet of the Monte Carlo casino. The paparazzi's cameras flashed like lightning, capturing the moment the world's youngest trillionaire made the most expensive mistake of his life. Inside the private VIP room, surrounded by oil barons and tech moguls, Thaddeus had just shaken hands with his biggest rival, Octavius Goldwater, sealing a wager that would either destroy his reputation or prove his ultimate superiority. $1 billion, 30 days. Make any woman of Octavius's choosing fall desperately in love with him. The twist? Octavius had chosen Persephone Nightingale. Percy, as she preferred to be called, was currently 3,000 miles away, in a small bakery in Vermont, flour in her raven black hair and chocolate smudged on her cheek, completely unaware that she'd just become the center of a billionaire's game. 6 months ago, she'd been scrubbing floors in Thaddeus's Manhattan penthouse. Tonight, she was the key to his pride and his fortune. You remember Percy, don't you? Octavius had smirked, swirling his cognac. Sweet little thing with those unusual, violet eyes. The one who quit your employ after you. What was it you called her? Irrelevant domestic help? Thaddeus's jaw had tightened. He remembered Percy perfectly, too perfectly. Her laugh like silver bells, the way she hummed while cleaning, how she'd left homemade cookies on his desk, with little notes that said, "Have a better day, Mr. Ravencrest." He'd fired her via text message after she'd accidentally interrupted a board meeting to bring him soup when he was sick. She hates you, Octavius continued, enjoying every word. Moved to Vermont, opened a bakery called Sweet Revenge. Rather poetic, don't you think? Now, 12 hours later, Thaddeus stood outside that very bakery, watching through the frost-covered window as Percy kneaded dough with the same gentle precision she'd once used to fold his shirts. Her simple white apron and flour-dusted jeans were a stark contrast to the designer gowns of the women who usually surrounded him. She looked happy, content, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or jewelry. The bell above the door chimed as he entered, and Percy looked up from her work. For a moment, time stopped. Her violet eyes, yes, he'd remembered. Correctly, they were the color of amethysts, widened in recognition and something else. Disgust? Fear? He couldn't tell. "We're closed," she said simply, not moving from behind the counter. "Percy, it's Miss Nightingale to you." Her voice was steady, but he caught the slight tremor. "And I said we're closed." Thaddeus looked around the cozy bakery. Mismatched chairs, hand-painted signs, the smell of vanilla and cinnamon, replacing the sterile luxury he was accustomed to. This was her kingdom now, and he was the unwelcome intruder. "I came to apologize," he said, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. When was the last time he'd apologized for anything? Percy's laugh was bitter. "You came here to apologize? You, Thaddeus Ravencrest, traveled 3,000 miles to apologize to your former maid? You were never just a maid to me." The lie slipped out so smoothly he almost believed it himself. But Percy's expression told him she wasn't buying it. "Really? Then what was I? Because I distinctly remember you referring to me as the help when your friends visited. I remember you telling someone on the phone that I was easily replaceable." She wiped her hands on her apron, leaving small flower handprints. "I remember the text message that fired me. Your services are no longer required. Security will escort you out." Each word hit him like a physical blow. Thaddeus Ravencrest, who had never lost a negotiation, who had crushed entire corporations with a single decision, found himself speechless in front of a woman holding a rolling pin. "Percy, please. I was different then. You were exactly who you are now. A man who thinks people are disposable." She moved toward the door, clearly intending to escort him out. "The only difference is that now I'm not disposable to you anymore. I'm inconvenient, I'm the one who got away, and your ego can't handle it." As she reached for the door handle, Thaddeus did something he'd never done in his life. He begged, One coffee. Give me one coffee and 5 minutes to explain why I'm really here. Percy paused, her hand on the door. Why are you really here, Thaddeus? He looked into her violet eyes, and for a moment he forgot about the $1 billion bet, forgot about Octavius, forgot about everything except the truth he hadn't admitted even to himself. Because I think I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go. The admission hung in the air between them like a challenge. Outside, snow began to fall on the quiet Vermont street, and inside the warm bakery, two people who had once shared the same space but never the same world stood at the crossroads of everything they thought they knew about love, pride, and second chances. What Thaddeus didn't know was that Percy had her own secrets, and what Percy didn't know was that this time, she held all the cards. The entertainment news just called me the $1 billion prize. Apparently I'm trending worldwide and I don't even know why. Persephone Nightingale stared at her phone screen in complete bewilderment as notifications flooded in faster than she could read them. Her Instagram followers had jumped from 847 to 2.3 million overnight, and her DMs were exploding with messages in languages she didn't recognize. It had been exactly 72 hours since Thaddeus Ravencrest had walked into her bakery, turned her world upside down with his presence, and then vanished again like smoke. 3 days of her obsessively replaying their conversation while burning 2 batches of croissants and accidentally putting salt in the sugar dispenser. Percy, honey, you need to see this. Her best friend and business partner, Magnolia Sinclair, burst through the bakery's back door, holding her tablet like it was contaminated. Maggie's usually perfect auburn curls were disheveled, and her green eyes were wide with panic. What now? Did someone post a bad review because I accidentally gave them salted caramel instead of regular caramel? Percy didn't look up from the wedding cake she was decorating, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy in her suddenly chaotic world. Percy, Maggie's voice was deadly serious. You're on TMZ. You're on Entertainment Tonight. You're on the front page of the New York Post. The piping bag slipped from Percy's fingers, sending a cascade of buttercream roses across the marble counter. What are you talking about? Maggie turned the tablet toward her, and Percy's world imploded. The headline read, Trillionaire's Billion. Dollar bet, can Thaddeus Ravencrest make his ex-maid fall in love in 30 days? Below it was a photo of her taken through the bakery window. Flour in her hair, chocolate on her cheek, completely unaware she was being photographed. Next to it was a picture of Thaddeus in his tuxedo at the Monte Carlo casino, shaking hands with another man she didn't recognize. Percy's hands shook as she read the article aloud. Sources close to the situation report that Ravencrest accepted a wager from rival billionaire Octavius Goldwater, betting $1 billion that he could make any woman fall in love with him within 30 days. The chosen target, Persephone Nightingale, 28, former household staff member who now owns a small bakery in Vermont. The words blurred as tears filled her violet eyes. Target. That's what she was. A target. Percy, I'm so sorry, Maggie whispered, but Percy was already running. She burst out of the bakery's back door into the Vermont snow, gasping for air that felt too thin, too cold, too real. Behind her, she could hear Maggie calling her name, but all she could process was the thundering of her own heartbeat and the echo of Thaddeus's voice. Because I think I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go. Lies. All lies. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Thaddeus Ravencrest. She stared at the name on her screen, then threw the phone into a snowbank. 20 minutes later, she was still sitting on the back steps of her bakery, snowflakes melting, in her dark hair when a black Tesla pulled up. Not Thaddeus. She'd have recognized the obnoxious roar of whatever ridiculously expensive car he was driving these days. This was someone else entirely. A man stepped out, tall and distinguished, with silver hair and kind eyes. He approached her slowly like she was a wounded animal that might bolt. Miss Nightingale, I'm James Whitmore, Thaddeus's former business partner. I think we need to talk. Percy looked up at him, mascara streaking down her cheeks. If you're here to convince me to participate in your friend's sick game, you can. I'm here to tell you how to win it. That stopped her cold. What? James sat down beside her on the snowy steps, completely ruining his expensive coat. Thaddeus Ravencrest destroyed my company 3 years ago. Hostile takeover, leveraged buyout left me with nothing but debt and a dozen lawsuits. I've been waiting for the perfect opportunity for revenge. He pulled out his phone, showing her a bank statement. I've been tracking this bet since it happened. Octavius Goldwater isn't just Thaddeus's rival. He's his former best friend. They had a falling out over a woman named Arabella Winters 5 years ago. This isn't about money, Miss Nightingale. This is about 2 men using you as a pawn in their chess game. Percy's anger flared. And you want to use me too? I want to help you destroy them both. James's smile was sharp as winter air. Think about it. Thaddeus has 30 days to make you fall in love with him. But what if, instead of falling for his lies, you made him fall for you? What if you played the game better than he ever could? The idea was insane, dangerous, impossible, and absolutely perfect. I'm listening, Percy said. James pulled out a business card. I've done my research on you, Miss Nightingale. Graduated top of your class from culinary school. Worked 3 jobs to pay your way through college. Built this bakery from nothing after Thaddeus fired you. You're not just some small-town baker, you're a warrior. Percy looked at the card. Whitmore and Associates, Strategic Consulting. She almost laughed. You want me to become a consultant in the revenge business? I want you to become the woman who brought down Thaddeus Ravencrest using nothing but her own brilliance and his own arrogance against him. As if summoned by their conversation, another car pulled up. This one a silver Aston Martin that screamed money and bad decisions. Thaddeus stepped out, his usual confident stride faltering when he saw James. Whitmore. His voice was ice. I should have known you'd crawl out of whatever hole you've been hiding in. Ravencrest. James stood up, brushing snow from his coat. I was just telling Miss Nightingale about your little wager. She seems interested in the terms. Thaddeus's gaze snapped to Percy, who was still sitting on the steps looking between the 2 men like she was watching a tennis match played with grenades. Percy, I can explain. Explain what? She stood up slowly, her voice carrying a dangerous calm that made both men take a step back. Explain how you bet $1 billion on my emotions? Explain how you turned my life into entertainment for rich people who have nothing better to do than play games with other people's hearts? The bakery door opened and Maggie peeked out. Percy? There are reporters here, like a lot of reporters, and they're asking about, everything. Through the front windows, Percy could see the camera flashes, the news vans, the crowd of people who had gathered to gawk at the small-town baker who had become an overnight sensation. She looked at Thaddeus, who was staring at her with something that might have been regret. Then she looked at James, who was offering her a chance at revenge. Finally, she looked at her bakery, her sanctuary, her pride, her proof that she could build something beautiful from nothing. You know what? She said, her voice carrying across the snowy parking lot. Game on. She turned to James first. I'll take your help, but I do this my way, with my rules. Then she faced Thaddeus, and her smile was sweeter than any cake she'd ever baked. You want to play games with my heart, Thaddeus? Fine, but remember, I'm not the same girl who used to clean your floors. I'm the woman who built an empire from flour and sugar while you were busy betting on other people's lives. She walked toward the bakery, pausing at the door. Oh, and Thaddeus? The 30 days started 3 days ago. You're already behind. As she disappeared inside, leaving both men standing in the snow, Percy felt something she hadn't experienced in months. The thrill of being in control of her own story. Let the games begin. I just hired the world's most expensive PR firm, a celebrity stylist, and a revenge consultant. Apparently, if you're going to destroy a billionaire, you need to look fabulous doing it. Persephone Nightingale stood in the penthouse suite of the Four Seasons, New York, staring at her reflection in a mirror that probably cost more than her annual rent. The woman looking back at her was unrecognizable. Gone were the flour-dusted aprons and messy buns. In their place stood a vision in midnight blue silk, her raven hair cascading in perfect waves, violet eyes highlighted with just enough makeup to be devastating. "Magnifique," breathed Celestine Dubois, the French stylist who had transformed Percy in less than 4 hours. "You are ready for war, ma chérie." James Whitmore nodded approvingly from the suite's living area, where he'd set up what looked like a military command center. Multiple screens displayed social media feeds, stock prices, and news coverage. The transformation is remarkable, but remember, this is about strategy, not just appearance. Percy turned from the mirror, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Those heels alone cost more than she used to make in a month as Thaddeus's maid. "Tell me again why I need to look like a billionaire's trophy wife to beat him at his own game." "Because," James pulled up a photo on his tablet, "in 3 hours you're going to walk into the Metropolitan Museum of Art's exclusive winter gala. The same gala Thaddeus attends every year, the same gala where he'll expect to find you crying into a pint of ice cream in Vermont." The photo showed last year's gala, New York's elite in designer gowns and tuxedos, dripping with diamonds and arrogance. And there, at the center of it all, was Thaddeus in a perfectly tailored Tommy Ford tuxedo, his arm around a blonde socialite whose name Percy couldn't remember. "Phase 1, James continued, "is making him realize you're not the broken little maid he left behind. You're a queen who's learned to play chess." Percy's phone buzzed with a text from Maggie back in Vermont. "OMG, the bakery is mobbed. News crews. Everywhere. I'm selling out of everything. This is insane. Also, your hot billionaire ex-boss called 47 times. Should I answer?" A smile played at Percy's lips. "Don't answer, Maggie. Let him wonder." "Excellent instinct," James approved. "Rule number 1 of psychological warfare. Information is power. The less he knows about your moves, the more desperate he becomes." A knock at the door interrupted them. Percy's heart skipped. Surely Thaddeus hadn't found her already. But James's smile was predatory as he opened the door to reveal a delivery man with an enormous bouquet of white roses. "For Miss Nightingale," the man announced. Percy took the card with trembling fingers. In Thaddeus's distinctive handwriting, "Percy, I know you hate me. I know you have every right to. But please, let me explain everything. The bet was wrong, but my feelings weren't. Give me a chance to prove that She laughed, the sound sharp and bright. "He thinks flowers will fix this?" "No," came a familiar voice from the doorway. "I think honesty will." Percy spun around to find Thaddeus standing in the suite's entrance, somehow having bypassed hotel security. He looked haggard, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept since their confrontation in Vermont. "How did you—" Percy started. "I own 40% of this hotel," Thaddeus said simply, his eyes drinking in her transformation. "Percy, you look—" He swallowed hard. "You look like you belong in this world." "Maybe because I always did," she replied coolly. "You just never bothered to see it." James stepped between them, his smile dangerous. "This is private property. Ravencrest, you're trespassing." "I'm not here to fight you, Whitmore." Thaddeus's eyes never left Percy's face. "I'm here to tell Percy the truth. All of it." "I already know the truth," Percy said, but her voice wavered slightly. "You bet $1 billion on making me fall in love with you. I'm your target, your conquest, you're the only woman I've ever actually loved." The words hit the room like a bomb. James's confident expression faltered. Celestine stopped, pretending not to listen from the bedroom, and Percy felt her carefully constructed armor crack just a little. "Love?" Percy's laugh was bitter. "You don't even know what love is, Thaddeus. Love isn't betting on someone's emotions for sport." "You're right." Thaddeus stepped closer, ignoring James's warning glare. "The bet was the stupidest thing I've ever done. But I didn't make it because I thought it would be easy to make you love me. I made it because Octavius knew it would be impossible." Percy's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He knew I was already in love with you. He knew I'd been in love with you since the day you left soup on my desk when I was sick. He knew I fired you because having you in my house, caring about me, was driving me insane because I couldn't admit I'd fallen for my maid. The admission hung in the air like a challenge. Percy's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the confusion and pain in her violet eyes. So he set you up, James said slowly, the pieces clicking together. He knew you'd lose the bet because you can't fake love with someone you actually love. And he knew I'd hurt Percy in the process, which would destroy any chance I ever had, with her. Thaddeus's voice was raw. It was the perfect revenge. He gets his $1 billion and I lose the only person who ever mattered to me. Percy sank into a chair, her elegant facade crumbling. This is all still just a game to you people. I'm still just a pawn. No. Thaddeus knelt beside her chair, his hand hovering near hers but not quite touching. You're the queen, Percy. You always were. I was just too proud and too stupid to admit I was playing in a league way above my level. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Maggie. Percy, your bakery is trending #1 on TikTok. Some celebrity chef just posted a video saying your chocolate croissants are better than anything in Paris. Orders are pouring in from everywhere. Percy stared at the message, then looked around the luxurious suite, at James with his revenge, plots at Thaddeus with his desperate eyes, at her own reflection in that expensive mirror. You know what? She stood up, her decision crystallizing. I'm done being anyone's pawn. James, I appreciate the offer, but I don't need your help to destroy Thaddeus. And Thaddeus, if you really love me, prove it. Both men looked at her expectantly. Here's my counter bet, Percy announced, her voice carrying the authority of a woman who'd built something from nothing. 30 days, like you agreed. But the terms change. You don't get to buy my love with flowers and fancy dinners. You don't get to impress me with your money or your power. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. You want to win me back? Then prove you can survive in my world. Come work in my bakery. No servants, no assistants, no $1 billion safety net. Just you, flour, and the chance to show me who you really are when you're not hiding behind your fortune. Thaddeus blinked. You want me to? Work in a bakery? I want you to remember what it feels like to build something with your own hands, to serve people instead of being served, to understand what real work actually means. Percy's smile was sharper than any knife in her kitchen. Think you can handle it, Mr. Ravencrest? The challenge in her voice was unmistakable. James was grinning like Christmas had come early. And Thaddeus was staring at Percy like she'd just offered him the moon. When do I start? He said. Percy's smile widened. Tomorrow, 5 a.m. Don't be late. We have croissants to make. As she walked toward the door, leaving both men stunned in her wake, Percy felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The intoxicating power of being completely, utterly in control of her own destiny. The game had officially begun, and this time she was writing the rules. The richest man in America just showed up to work in a $15,000 suit and Italian leather shoes. I handed him an apron that says, "Kiss the cook," and told him his first job was scrubbing toilets. At exactly 4:47 a.m., Thaddeus Ravencrest stood outside Sweet Revenge Bakery in what could only be described as the most expensive outfit ever worn to a minimum wage job. His Armani suit was pristine, his Hermes tie perfectly knotted, and his handmade Italian shoes probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Persephone emerged from the back alley, coffee in hand, wearing faded jeans, worn sneakers, and a simple black t-shirt that somehow made her look more radiant than any designer gown ever could. She took one look at his outfit and burst into laughter that echoed through the quiet Vermont street. "Oh, this is perfect," she gasped between giggles. "You actually thought you could bake bread in Armani?" Thaddeus straightened his tie defensively. "I don't own casual clothes." "Honey, you're about to get very acquainted with flour, yeast, and industrial-strength detergent." Percy unlocked the bakery door, flipping on lights that revealed a workspace that was the complete opposite of Thaddeus's sterile corporate environment. Hope that suit has sentimental value, because it's about to become a very expensive dish rag. She tossed him an apron, bright pink with "Kiss the Cook" emblazoned in glittery letters. First lesson, in my kitchen everyone starts at the bottom. Literally. The bathroom needs scrubbing before we open. Thaddeus stared at the apron like it was contaminated. You want me to clean toilets? I want you to understand that every job in this bakery matters. The person who cleans the bathroom is just as important as the person who decorates the wedding cakes. Percy's violet eyes were serious now. This isn't about humiliating you, Thaddeus. This is about seeing if you can value work that doesn't come with a corner office and a 7-figure salary. 20 minutes later, Thaddeus Ravencrest, heir to a business empire, owner of private jets and luxury yachts, was on his hands and knees scrubbing tile grout with a toothbrush, his $15,000 suit completely ruined. His perfectly styled hair was damp with sweat, and there was a suspicious stain on his Italian leather shoes that he was trying very hard not to think about. "How's it going in there?" Percy called from the kitchen, where the sounds of industrial mixers and the heavenly smell of rising dough filled the air. "Peachy," Thaddeus called back, his voice strained. He'd never realized how many corners a bathroom could have, or how much his back could hurt from manual labor. By 6 a.m., the first customers were arriving, a mix of locals and tourists who'd made the pilgrimage to see the billion-dollar bakery. Percy emerged from the kitchen carrying trays of fresh pastries, her cheeks flushed from the heat of the ovens, looking like she belonged on the cover of a magazine. "Thaddeus," she called sweetly, "time for customer service." He emerged from the bathroom looking like he'd been through a natural disaster. His hair was disheveled, his shirt was untucked, and he had cleaning supplies in places he didn't know cleaning supplies could go. The customers, a mix of morning commuters and curious gawkers, stared at him in shock. Someone whispered, "Is that really Thaddeus Ravencrest?" Another person was already filming with their phone. Percy handed him a hairnet. "Welcome to the front lines. Table 6 wants 2 cappuccinos, a blueberry muffin, and extra foam. Table 3 is waiting for their order of a dozen assorted pastries. And the woman at the counter wants to know if you're really worth $1 billion or if that's just media hype." Thaddeus looked at the hairnet like it was a poisonous snake. "I don't know how to make coffee." "Then you're about to learn." Percy guided him to the espresso machine, a temperamental beast that looked like it belonged in a laboratory. "This is Bertha. She's been with us since we opened, and she has opinions about everything. You need to treat her with respect, or she'll burn your coffee and make you look like an amateur." "It's a machine," Thaddeus protested. "It's a 17-year-old Italian espresso machine with more personality than most people I know." Percy demonstrated the process, grinding beans, tamping, steaming milk. "The secret is in the timing and the pressure. Too much force and you'll over-extract. Too little and it'll be weak. It's about finding the perfect balance." Thaddeus watched her hands move with practiced precision, the same focus and attention to detail he brought to billion-dollar mergers. For the first time, he began to understand that this wasn't just making coffee, this was craftsmanship. His first attempt was a disaster. The espresso was bitter, the milk burned, and the foam looked like concrete. The customer, a local contractor named Pete who'd been coming to the bakery for 2 years, took one sip and winced. "Son," Pete said kindly, "I've had better coffee at gas stations." Percy appeared at Thaddeus's shoulder. "Try again. This time listen to what Bertha is telling you." "The machine doesn't talk," Thaddeus muttered. "Everything talks if you know how to listen." Percy's hand briefly covered his on the espresso machine's lever. "Feel the resistance, hear the pressure, watch the color of the crema. Bertha will tell you exactly what she needs." It took 17 attempts, but finally, Thaddeus produced a cappuccino that didn't make people wince. Pete took a sip, considered it, and nodded approvingly. "Now that's more like it. You might make a barista yet, Mr. Billionaire." The lunch rush hit like a tsunami. Orders flew in faster than Thaddeus could process them. His hands, accustomed to signing documents and shaking hands at board meetings, cramped from carrying trays and operating the cash register. His feet, cushioned by custom orthotic insoles and handmade shoes, ached in the borrowed work boots Percy had found for him. But something strange was happening. With each successful order, Each satisfied customer, each small victory over the temperamental Bertha, Thaddeus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of work that mattered to real people. Around 2 p.m., during a brief lull, he found Percy in the kitchen, methodically decorating cupcakes with buttercream roses that looked like tiny works of art. "How do you do it?" he asked, slumping against the counter. "Do what?" "This. All of this." He gestured around the kitchen. "The early mornings, the physical labor, the demanding customers. How do you make it look effortless?" Percy paused in her decorating, really looking at him for the first time all day. His hair was a mess. His borrowed apron was covered in flour and coffee stains, and there were dark circles under his eyes. But there was something different about his expression, a humility she'd never seen before. "It's not effortless," she said quietly. "Some days I'm so tired I can barely stand. Some days the ovens break down and I lose a whole day's worth of inventory. Some days customers are rude and demanding and make me question why I ever thought I could run a business. Then why do you do it?" Percy set down her piping bag and really considered the question. "Because when I see Pete smile after his first sip of coffee, when I watch a little girl's face light up when she sees her birthday cake, when someone tells me that my chocolate chip cookies taste like their grandmother's, that's when I know I'm not just baking. I'm creating moments of happiness." She looked directly into his eyes. "That's something you can't buy, Thaddeus. You can't acquire it in a hostile takeover or negotiate it in a boardroom. You have to earn it, one customer at a time, one day at a time." Before he could respond, the bell above the front door chimed and Magnolia burst in with her phone held high. "Percy, you need to see this." Maggie's green eyes were bright with excitement. "Someone posted a TikTok of Thaddeus making coffee this morning. It's gone viral. Like 20 million views viral. Billionaire barista is trending worldwide." She showed them the video. Thaddeus, disheveled and determined, struggling with the espresso machine while Percy patiently coached him. The comments were a mix of disbelief, admiration, and hilarious observations about the world's richest man learning to foam milk. "Oh God," Thaddeus groaned. "My board of directors is going to have me committed." "Actually," Maggie grinned, scrolling through her phone, "your stock price just jumped 12%. Apparently investors think this whole thing is either a brilliant PR move or evidence that you're finally developing a personality." Percy looked at the viral video, then at Thaddeus, who was staring at his flour-covered hands like he didn't recognize them. Something was shifting between them. Not the electric attraction of opposites, but something deeper. The recognition of two people discovering new sides of themselves. "Day 1 down," she said softly. 29 to go. Thaddeus looked up, at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, his smile was completely genuine. "Same time tomorrow?" 5 a.m. sharp. "And Thaddeus?" Percy's own smile was warm, real. "Wear something you don't mind getting dirty." As the afternoon sun streamed through the bakery windows, casting golden light on flour-dusted surfaces and the organized chaos of a working kitchen, something beautiful was beginning to rise, like bread in a warm oven, slow and steady and full of promise. I thought I was finally winning her heart, and then my ex-fiancé showed up at the bakery in a helicopter. Apparently, subtlety isn't a billionaire trait. Day 15 of the bet found Thaddeus Ravencrest doing something he'd never imagined. Possible humming while kneading bread dough at 5:30 a.m. His hands, once soft from a lifetime of luxury, now bore the honest calluses of real work. His hair was perpetually dusted with flour, and he'd developed an inexplicable attachment to his pink Kiss the Cook apron. More importantly, he'd learned to read the subtle language of Persephone's moods. The way she tucked her hair behind, her ear when she was concentrating, how her laugh became more musical when she was genuinely happy. The soft smile she got when watching him struggle with a particularly difficult recipe, not mocking, but fond. "Your croissants are getting better," Percy admitted, inspecting his latest batch. They were still slightly lopsided, but the layers were improving. "Mrs. Henderson specifically requested the ones you made yesterday." Thaddeus felt a ridiculous surge of pride. "Really?" Really? She said they reminded her of her honeymoon in Paris, except with more character. Percy's eyes sparkled with mischief. I think she meant the croissants, not you, but I could be wrong. They'd developed a rhythm over the past 2 weeks, a partnership born of shared labor and mutual respect. Thaddeus had stopped trying to impress her with grand gestures and started learning the quiet satisfaction of small victories. A perfect espresso, a customer's genuine smile, the way Percy's face lit up when she tasted something he'd made himself. The morning rush was in full swing when the sound of rotor blades shattered the peaceful Vermont air. Customers looked up from their coffee and pastries as a sleek black helicopter landed in the bakery's parking lot, sending napkins and leaves swirling in its wake. What the hell? Magnolia dropped the tray of muffins she'd been carrying. Thaddeus felt his blood freeze as the helicopter door opened and a vision in white stepped out. Arabella Winters, former supermodel, current socialite, and the woman he'd been engaged to before Percy entered his life, strode toward the bakery like she was walking a Milan runway. Arabella was everything Percy wasn't. Tall, where Percy was petite, platinum blonde, where Percy was raven-haired, cold where Percy was warm. She was also the reason Octavius Goldwater hated Thaddeus with the burning intensity of 1,000 suns. Darling, Arabella's voice carried the affected accent of someone who'd spent too much time in European boarding schools. She swept into the bakery, her designer heels clicking against the worn wooden floors, her Chanel suit pristine despite the helicopter ride. I simply had to see this adorable little establishment. The word establishment dripped with condescension. Every customer in the bakery turned to stare, their phones already recording what was clearly about to become social media gold. Percy, covered in flour and wearing her favorite work jeans, looked like a completely different species from the perfectly polished Arabella. But when she spoke, her voice was steady as steel. Can I help you? Oh, you must be the little baker everyone's talking about. Arabella's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I'm Arabella Winters. Perhaps Thaddeus has mentioned me? Thaddeus appeared from behind the espresso machine, his apron still tied around his waist, a streak of chocolate across his cheek. For a moment, no one spoke. Bella, he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. My God, Thaddeus, what have they done to you? Arabella looked him up and down like he was a particularly tragic art installation. You look so common. I look like someone who works for a living, Thaddeus replied, not moving from behind the counter. Arabella laughed, the sound like crystal breaking. How delightfully quaint. But surely this little experiment has gone on long enough. Octavius sent me to remind you that you have real responsibilities. The Shanghai merger is falling apart without you. The board is threatening a vote of no confidence. She produced a tablet, swiping through what were clearly dire financial reports. Sterling Industries stock has dropped 15% since you started this sabbatical. Your investors are getting nervous. Percy watched this exchange with growing understanding. This wasn't just about the bet anymore. This was about Thaddeus's entire world pulling him back into orbit. How thoughtful of Octavius to be so concerned about my welfare, Thaddeus said dryly. He's concerned about the $1 billion you're going to lose, Arabella shot back. Honestly, darling, did you really think you could play house with the help and it would end well? The casual cruelty of the words hit Percy like a physical blow. The help. After 2 weeks of watching Thaddeus learn to value honest work, seeing him laugh with customers and take pride in small accomplishments, Arabella's words were a reminder of exactly how his world saw people like Percy. Actually, Percy said, her voice dangerously quiet, I think Thaddeus is exactly where he needs to be. Arabella's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. Excuse me? You heard me. Percy stepped closer, and despite being 6 inches shorter than the former model, she somehow seemed to tower over her. For the first time in his life, Thaddeus is doing something real, something that matters to people other than shareholders and board members. Making coffee matters? Arabella's laugh was incredulous. Making anything with your own hands matters. Creating something that brings joy to people matters. Showing up every day and doing honest work matters. Percy's violet eyes blazed. But I wouldn't expect someone who's never worked a day in her life to understand that. The bakery had gone completely silent. Even the espresso machine seemed to hold its breath. Arabella's composure cracked for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. "You have no idea what you're talking about, little girl. Thaddeus belongs in my world, not kneading dough like some common laborer." "Maybe," Percy said softly. "The problem is with your world, not with honest work." That's when Thaddeus did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He untied his apron, folded it carefully, and set it on the counter. "You're right, Bella," he said quietly. Percy felt her heart stop. Around them, customers leaned forward, phones still recording, sensing the climax of a drama that had captivated the world. "I don't belong in your world anymore," Thaddeus continued, moving to stand beside Percy. "I belong here, with someone who taught me that the most valuable things in life can't be bought, sold, or acquired in hostile takeovers." He looked directly at Percy, and his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I belong with someone who sees me, not as a balance sheet or a stock portfolio, but as a person capable of becoming better than I ever thought possible." Arabella's face went through several shades of fury before settling on icy disdain. "Fine. Destroy your empire for this fantasy. But don't come crying to me when reality sets in." She turned on her designer heel and stalked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Thaddeus, Octavius wanted me to give you a message. The bet expires in 15 days. If you don't win, he's not just taking your $1 billion, he's taking Sterling Industries. Apparently you signed some rather binding agreements in your confidence." The door slammed behind her, and moments later, the helicopter lifted off, leaving the bakery in stunned silence. Percy stared at Thaddeus, processing what had just happened. "You could lose everything?" "I already lost everything," Thaddeus said, his hand finding hers across the flour-dusted counter. 3 years ago, when I was too proud and too stupid to realize that a woman who left me soup when I was sick was worth more than my entire empire. But the company, your life's work—" "My life's work," Thaddeus interrupted, "is standing right here. Everything else is just money and buildings and ego." Percy felt tears prick her eyes, not because of his words, beautiful as they were, but because she could see the truth in his face. He meant it. He really meant it. "Thaddeus?" she whispered. "I know," he said softly. "I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I treated you terribly. I know that 2 weeks of making coffee doesn't erase 3 years of being an arrogant bastard." He paused, his thumb gently tracing over her knuckles. "But I also know that I'd rather spend the rest of my life making croissants with you than spend another day in a boardroom without you." The bakery erupted in spontaneous applause. Mrs. Henderson was openly crying into her cappuccino. Pete the contractor was filming everything with tears in his eyes, and Magnolia was jumping up and down like she'd just won the lottery. But Percy wasn't paying attention to any of them. She was staring at Thaddeus, at this man who'd just chosen her over an empire, and feeling her carefully guarded heart crack wide open. "You magnificent, impossible, ridiculous man," she breathed. And then, with the entire bakery watching and recording, Persephone Nightingale kissed Thaddeus Ravencrest like the world was ending and only they could save it. When they finally broke apart, breathless and flour-covered and completely oblivious to their audience, Thaddeus rested his forehead against hers. "Does this mean I win the bet?" he whispered. Percy's smile was radiant. "Darling, you won my heart the moment you chose to stay. Today, the richest man in America is getting married in a small-town bakery, wearing an apron and serving wedding cake to billionaires who flew in on private jets. Plot twist, he's never been happier." 6 months later, Sweet Revenge Bakery had become the most famous small business in America. What started as a billion-dollar bet had transformed into a love story that captured the world's imagination. The bakery now had a 6-month waiting list, 3 published cookbooks, and a Netflix documentary in production. But none of that mattered to Thaddeus Ravencrest as he stood in the bakery's kitchen at dawn, carefully piping buttercream roses onto what would become his own wedding cake. His hands, once soft and manicured, now bore the proud calluses of 6. Months of honest work. His hair was dusted with flour, his favorite pink apron was stained with chocolate, and he'd never been more content in his life. "You know," Persephone said, sliding up beside him with 2 steaming cups of coffee, "most grooms don't make their own wedding cakes. Most grooms don't get to marry the woman who taught them that happiness tastes better than any billion-dollar deal." Thaddeus accepted the coffee gratefully, stealing a kiss that tasted like vanilla and promises. "Besides, someone has to make sure it's perfect for my wife." Wife. The word still made Percy's heart flutter like a teenager's. After 6 months of working side by side, falling asleep flour-covered and exhausted, and waking up to start all over, again she'd learned that love wasn't just about grand gestures and dramatic declarations. It was about showing up every day, choosing each other through burnt croissants and difficult customers, and the 1,000 small moments that made up a life. Speaking of which, Percy glanced at the clock. "Our guests will be arriving soon. You might want to get dressed." Through the front windows, they could see the surreal sight of private jets landing at the small Vermont airport, disgorging billionaires and celebrities who had come to witness the wedding of the century. The guest list read like a Forbes 100 directory, but the ceremony would take place in a 40-seat bakery with mismatched chairs and hand-painted signs. "In a minute," Thaddeus said, adding the final rose to their cake. "I want to savor this. 6 months ago, I thought success was measured in stock prices and market dominance. Now I know it's measured in perfect buttercream roses and the way you smile when you taste something I've made." A knock at the back door interrupted the moment. Percy frowned. Their wedding wasn't supposed to start for another 3 hours, and all the vendors knew to use the front entrance. She opened the door to find Octavius Goldwater standing in the alley, looking remarkably uncomfortable in his $1,000 suit. The man who had orchestrated the bet that brought them together looked older, his silver hair less perfectly styled, his usual predatory confidence replaced by something that might have been regret. "Octavius," Thaddeus said coolly, not moving from behind the cake. "I wasn't expecting you." "I wasn't planning to come," Octavius admitted. "But there are some things that need to be said before you start your new life." Percy tensed, ready to defend her kitchen and her fiancé from whatever scheme Octavius had planned, but the older man's next words caught her completely off guard. "I came to apologize." Thaddeus blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "And to give you this." Octavius pulled out a tablet, showing legal documents that made Thaddeus's eyes widen. "I'm transferring back all the Sterling Industries shares I acquired through our agreement. The company is yours again, free and clear." "I don't understand," Percy said slowly. "You won the bet. Thaddeus chose me, so technically you get the $1 billion and the company." Octavius's smile was rueful. "Actually, Miss Nightingale, the bet was that Thaddeus could make you fall in love with him in 30 days. And unless I'm very much mistaken..." He gestured to her engagement ring, a simple band Thaddeus had made himself from silver melted down from his first successful espresso machine repair. "You are quite thoroughly in love with him." "But..." Thaddeus started. "I set you up to fail," Octavius continued. "I chose Percy because I knew you'd hurt her, and I thought that would guarantee my victory. What I didn't anticipate was that you'd actually change, that you'd become the man she deserved instead of trying to make her accept the man you were." He looked around the bakery, taking in the warm lighting, the handmade decorations, the obvious love that had gone into every detail. "I've spent 30 years building an empire, Thaddeus. 30 years focused on acquisition and domination and proving I was better than everyone else. And you know what I have to show for it? Empty houses, fair weather friends, and the bitter taste of a revenge that turned out to be meaningless." Octavius turned to Percy. "You taught him something I never could. You taught him that real wealth isn't what you own. It's what you're willing to give up for love." Percy felt tears prick her eyes. "Octavius, there's something else," he said, producing another set of documents. "I've been following your bakery's success. The franchise requests, the cookbook deals, the television offers. You're sitting on a potential empire of your own, Miss Nightingale. One built on joy instead of fear." He handed her the papers. "I'd like to invest. Not to control or acquire, but to help you share what you've built here with the world. A $50 million investment, no strings attached, to help expand Sweet Revenge into whatever you want it to become. Percy stared at the documents, then at Thaddeus, who was grinning like Christmas morning. Why? Because, Octavius said simply, I want to be part of something that builds up instead of tearing down. I want to invest in love instead of greed. And maybe, if you'll let me, I'd like to learn what you taught Thaddeus about finding happiness in simple things. Before anyone could respond, the front door chimed and Magnolia burst in, breathless and beautiful in her maid of honor dress. Oh, Percy, the guests are arriving and, oh. She stopped short, seeing Octavius. Should I call security? You should probably call the caterers, Percy said, her voice shaky with emotion. We just gained another wedding guest. 2 hours later, Sweet Revenge Bakery was packed with an impossible mix of people. Tech moguls sat next to local farmers. Supermodels chatted with retired school teachers. The governor of Vermont shared a table with Pete the contractor, both of them arguing good-naturedly about the best way to fix a leaky roof. At the front of the bakery, under an arch made entirely of croissants, Percy's idea, and white roses, Thaddeus's contribution, stood the most unlikely couple in corporate history. Thaddeus wore a simple black suit with his beloved pink apron tied over it, a compromise that had become his signature look. Percy wore her grandmother's wedding dress, altered to fit perfectly with flour still dusting her fingers from the morning's baking. Dearly beloved, began the officiant, a local pastor who had known Percy since childhood. We are gathered here today to witness something extraordinary. Not just the union of two people, but the transformation of two lives. He looked at Thaddeus. 6 months ago, you were the richest man in America. Today, you're the richest man in America for entirely different reasons. Then he turned to Percy. And you, my dear, have proven that the strongest force in the universe isn't money or power. It's a woman who knows her worth and isn't afraid to demand that others recognize it too. The vows they exchanged were simple, but profound. Thaddeus promised to choose love over profit, partnership over power, and Percy's happiness over his own pride every single day. Percy promised to believe in the man he was becoming, to challenge him when he needed it, and to share both the flower and the fortune of whatever life they built together. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss that followed was sweet with buttercream and bright with promise. The crowd erupted in cheers that could be heard 3 blocks away, and outside, the Vermont snow began to fall like confetti from heaven. As the reception continued around them, billionaires learning to dance to local bluegrass, socialites getting flour in their designer gowns while attempting to decorate cookies, and Octavius deep in conversation with Mrs. Henderson about her late husband's secret to perfect pie crust, Percy and Thaddeus found a quiet moment together behind the counter. So, Percy said, adjusting his apron with a smile, any regrets about giving up the corporate world for a life of 5 a.m. wake-up calls and difficult customers? Thaddeus looked around the bakery, at their friends laughing together, at the cake they'd made with their own hands, at the life they'd built from flour and determination and love that had surprised them both with its strength. Only one, he said seriously. Percy's heart skipped. What? I regret that it took me 3 years to realize that the woman who left soup on my desk was trying to feed my soul, not just my body. He cupped her face in his hands, hands that smelled like vanilla and hard work. I regret every day I was too blind to see that real wealth was standing right in front of me, offering me cookies and kindness and the chance to be better than I ever thought possible. Percy felt tears slip down her cheeks. You magnificent, impossible, ridiculous man. You're magnificent, impossible, ridiculous man, Thaddeus corrected, kissing her forehead. For the rest of our lives, if you'll have me. Forever and always, Percy whispered. But I have one condition. Anything. Tomorrow morning, we're back here at 5 a.m. These croissants won't make themselves. Thaddeus's laugh was pure joy. Mrs. Ravencrest, you have yourself a deal. As the sun set over Sweet Revenge Bakery, casting golden light through windows steamed with warmth and laughter, the world's most unlikely love story continued to unfold. Because sometimes the best revenge really is living well, and sometimes the most beautiful endings are actually just the beginning of something even sweeter. In the months that followed, sweet revenge grew into a global phenomenon. But Percy and Thaddeus made sure it never lost the heart that made it special. They opened locations in underserved communities, created scholarships for culinary students, and proved that businesses could profit by putting people first. Octavius became their most trusted advisor, and Percy's surrogate father, finally finding the family he'd never known he wanted. Arabella moved to Monaco and started a charity for retired racehorses, discovering that purpose was more fulfilling than Pilates. And every morning at 5 a.m., in a little bakery in Vermont, a former billionaire and his brilliant wife continued to prove that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought, sold, or acquired in hostile takeovers. They could only be baked, with love, one perfect croissant at a time. The end.